The static was a ghost, a sibilant whisper from a dead star haunting the encrypted satellite link. It was the sound of the ionosphere itself, an invisible, churning ocean of charged particles stretching across 700 kilometers of hostile territory, separating the Thuraya X5 Touch in Baku from a cheap, disposable burner phone vibrating on a polished mahogany desk in Tehran. For Ari Ben Zion, the incessant crackle and hiss was the sound of a fuse burning down, the friction of a world grinding inexorably towards a flashpoint. He pressed the phone harder against his ear, the hardened polymer casing slick with sweat in the humid, salt-laden Caspian air that seeped through the ill-fitting window frames of the safe-house apartment. Outside, the wind howled a low, mournful note off the water, a prelude to a storm. On the table next to him, a half-empty pack of Davidoff Gold cigarettes lay beside a cold, untouched cup of coffee. The lingering smell of tobacco, a familiar, acrid comfort in a world of variables. The voice on the other end was strained, thin as a garrote wire pulled taut to its breaking point, distorted by both distance and fear. The nightingale has forgotten its song. The code phrase landed in Ari's gut like a block of ice. It was the panic trigger. The verbal tripwire they had prayed in hushed, sterile meetings would never be used. It wasn't, "The canary is migrating," the controlled signal for a planned exfiltration. It wasn't even, "The garden is overgrown," the semi-urgent call for an accelerated timeline. This was the emergency chord, the one that meant the walls were no longer closing in. They had collapsed. It meant the shadow of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Pasdaran, was no longer a shadow, but a physical, breathing presence at the door. "Acknowledge," Ari said, his voice a low gravel, betraying none of the chaos erupting in his mind. He pitched his tone to be soothing, controlled, the calm at the center of the hurricane. His Farsi was flawless, carrying the soft, melodic accent of a native of Isfahan, a linguistic camouflage honed over 2 decades in the Mossad's Caesarea division, the tip of the spear. "They took my deputy this morning. Kaveh." From his home, the voice trembled, cracking on the name. It belonged to Dr. Reza Shirazi, Iran's foremost expert on advanced uranium enrichment centrifuges, the man who held the keys to the regime's nuclear kingdom and, now, the single most valuable asset Israel had ever cultivated inside the Islamic Republic. His wife called my wife, crying, hysterical. They were from the Ministry of Intelligence. But the orders came from Hakeem Denai's office. They asked for me by name. They know Ari. God help me, they know. Ari's mind, usually a cold, orderly machine of branching probabilities and contingency plans, became a flurry of collapsing calculations, a cascade of discarded protocols and vaporized timelines. Plan A, the meticulous 6-week extraction under the guise of an international medical conference in Turkey, was now smoke. Plan B, the arduous overland route through the desolate, bandit-infested wastes of Balochistan into Pakistan, was a pre-dug grave. That left Plan C, the Hail Mary, the one they called the Northern Gambit, in the sterile, windowless briefing rooms of the Glila Junction headquarters north of Tel Aviv. It was a mad dash north, a 300-kilometer sprint through territory infested with IRGC patrols, besieged militia, and Vivac informants, culminating in a desperate lunge for the border of Azerbaijan. It was brutal, crude, and had a survival probability best left uncalculated. "Reza, listen to me." Ari's tone was unnaturally calm, the practiced placidity of a pilot speaking to passengers during catastrophic engine failure. "Listen to my voice, not the noise in your head. You are going to gather your personal research notes, the specific Corsair flash drive we discussed, the one that looks like a key fob, and place it in your briefcase. Then you will walk out of your office at the normal time. Do not run. Do not look over your shoulder. Go to your car. Your wife Farah has her instructions. She will have Layla. Is your daughter with her now? Yes. She picked her up from school an hour ago. She used the excuse, she said Layla had a stomach ache. A lie, of course. A sound, half sob, half laugh, caught in the scientist's throat. My daughter is a terrible liar. She gets it from me. She probably smiled the whole time. Good. That's good, Ari lied. Nothing about this was good. It was a cascading failure contained only by the thinnest veneer of control. Drive home. Park in your designated space. No sooner, no later than you usually do. Go upstairs. Kiss your daughter. Tell your wife you love her. And then wait by the window that faces the street. A blue Paycan sedan, a common car, will backfire twice. Loudly. Like a gunshot. When you hear it, you have 90 seconds. Leave everything. Wallet, watches, phones. Everything that connects you to this life. Walk out. Don't run. A gray Saman taxi will be waiting at the corner of the alley. The driver will not speak to you. Get in. Do you understand me, Reza? I understand, Reza whispered. The weight of betrayal, not of his country, but of the life he had so carefully built, the life he loved, was crushingly heavy in that single phrase. He was a patriot, a man who loved Persian poetry and the scent of rain on dry Tehran earth. But he had come to believe the regime's nuclear ambitions were a suicidal pact with annihilation, a nihilistic quest for a martyr's crown. He had watched colleagues disappear into the maw of Evin prison, their research twisted from peaceful energy to genocidal weaponry. The final straw had been the previous month, in a windowless room at the Parchin military complex, when a high-ranking IRGC general had asked him to begin theoretical work on the miniaturization of a warhead for the Shahab-3 missile. He had looked at the schematics, at the cold physics of mass death, and seen not a deterrent, but an abyss. He had contacted a cutout at a scientific symposium in Vienna a week later. Reza, Ari said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate, the voice of a confessor. You are doing this for Layla, for her future. Remember her face. We will get you out. I promise you. The line went dead. Ari lowered the phone, his knuckles white. The promise felt like ash in his mouth. In his world, promises were just another tool, a lever to move a human asset from one square on the chessboard to another. But this time, it felt different. He had spent a year building a rapport with Reza, speaking to him through layers of quantum-encrypted channels, learning about his love for the poet Hafiz, his worries about his daughter's asthma, his quiet pride in his wife's paintings. Ari had seen their faces in the unnervingly high-resolution images provided by the OFEC 11 satellite, a family laughing at a picnic in Melat Park. They were no longer just the asset and the package. They were Reza, Farah, and little Layla. He turned from the window, which overlooked the gray, churning Caspian Sea, and faced the equipment laid out on the worn Persian rug of the Baku apartment. This was his command center, his cockpit for the coming storm. 3 ruggedized Panasonic Toughbook CF33 laptops hummed, their screens displaying a dizzying array of data. One showed a satellite map of northern Tehran, with the Shirazi's apartment building marked with a blinking red dot. A second streamed a waterfall of encrypted communications intercepted by Mossad's Unit 8200, the signal's intelligence division, running through a decryption algorithm that was, itself, one of Israel's most closely guarded secrets. He could see IRGC radio chatter on the 415.5 MHz tactical frequency lighting up around the Ministry of Intelligence headquarters. They were mobilizing. The third laptop was his direct, secure link to the field team. The Katsas, the combatants, and the local helpers, the Sayanim, who were the invisible, indispensable cogs in this desperate machine. The Northern Gambit was a symphony of perfectly timed movements, and he was the conductor of an orchestra playing on the edge of a cliff. The first discordant note had just been played. In Tehran, Farah Shirazi held her 8-year-old daughter, Layla, on her lap, reading her a story from the Shahnameh, the Epic of Kings. Her voice, usually so melodic, was a strained monotone as she recounted the adventures of the hero Rostam and his powerful horse, Raksh. She couldn't comprehend the words. Her mind was a maelstrom of fear. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Every creak of the floorboards in the apartment above, every shout from the street below, was the sound of discovery, the splintering of a door. Reza had explained it to her in hushed, agonizing tones weeks ago, the what-if scenario that had seemed like a paranoid fantasy. He had given her a small, vacuum-sealed pouch. "If I ever call you and tell you Layla has a stomach ache at school," he had said, his eyes dark with a fear she had never seen in her stoic, brilliant husband. "You pick her up immediately, you come home, and you open this." Inside were 3 expertly forged identity cards, with names she didn't recognize, a thick bundle of US dollars and euros, and a single, terrifying instruction written on flash paper. Trust the first person who asks you if you have seen the lost canary. When Reza's call had come an hour ago, her world had tilted on its axis. Now she held her daughter, the child's small back warm against her chest. The familiar weight of her, a painful reminder of everything she was about to lose. The apartment, filled with the aroma of the gourmet sabzi she had been cooking, was a museum of a life about to end. On the wall hung a painting Farah had done of a pomegranate orchard, its vibrant reds a mockery of the gray dread in her heart. She waited for her husband's key in the door. He arrived precisely at 5:32 p.m., his face a mask of forced normality that was more terrifying than any open display of panic. He kissed Layla's head, his lips lingering. He met Farah's eyes, and in that silent, desperate glance, a lifetime of love, fear, and farewell was exchanged. He walked to the window and stood, a sentinel awaiting his own doom or deliverance. The minutes stretched into an eternity. The city's evening call to prayer, the Adhan, began its mournful cry from a nearby minaret, the sound coiling through the open window, a soundtrack to the final moments of their lives. Then, from the street below, a sharp crack, followed a second later by another. The blue paykan. Reza turned from the window, his face pale but resolute. "It is time." Farah scooped up Layla, who was now half asleep, roused by the noise. "Mama, where are we going?" she murmured, her voice thick with sleep. "On an adventure, my love," Farah whispered, her own voice cracking. "A special trip to see the stars." They walked out of the apartment, leaving behind the simmering stew, the family portraits on the wall, the entire tapestry of their existence. The 90 seconds felt like a lifetime, and no time at all. As they reached the corner of the alley, a gray Saman taxi idled, its engine a low, anxious thrum. The rear door swung open as if by magic. They scrambled in, the door shutting with a solid, final thud that severed them from their past. The driver, a man with a weathered face and eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing, pulled away from the curb without a word, melting into the chaotic, honking river of Tehran traffic. Watching on his satellite feed in Baku, Ari let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His lungs burned. Phase 1 complete. He muttered into the noise-canceling microphone of his headset. Nightingale is in the cage. I repeat, Nightingale is in the cage. The journey through Tehran was a masterclass in urban evasion, orchestrated by Ari from hundreds of kilometers away. The taxi was a sterile vehicle. Purchased for cash a month ago, its plates belonging to a car that had been scrapped years earlier. It was slated to be abandoned and burned within the hour. The driver was a Scion, a local Jewish businessman named Jacob, whose family had lived in Iran for 2.5 millennia. He owed the state of Israel nothing, but he believed in its existence as a sanctuary, a promise, and he would risk his life for it. Ari's primary screen showed the taxi's progress as a green dot, while a constellation of red dots representing known IRGC and VEVAK intelligence ministry patrols pulsed around it. A predictive algorithm, codenamed Prophet and developed in the labs of Herzliya, anticipated their movements with terrifying accuracy. Approaching Valiasr Square. Jacob's voice came through Ari's headset, impossibly calm and even. Heavy patrol presence ahead. It seems they are setting up a snap checkpoint. Take the detour, Jacob, Ari commanded, his fingers flying across a keyboard, routing a new path. Immediate left on Fatemi Street. There's a staged traffic incident in 2 minutes at the intersection with Kargar. It will block eastward pursuit. On another screen, Ari watched a live feed from a municipal traffic camera he shouldn't have had access to. A battered pickup truck, driven by another Scion, a young university student, suddenly swerved, slamming into the side of a city bus. It was a minor fender bender, nothing more. But in Tehran's terminally congested arteries, it was enough to cause instant blaring gridlock. The gray Saman slipped through the growing chaos moments before the first sirens began to wail in the distance. The first vehicle swap happened in the labyrinthine bowels of the Tehran Grand Bazaar. Jacob pulled into a loading dock behind a rug merchant's shop, the air thick with the scent of wool, spice, and diesel. A corrugated steel door rattled down behind them, plunging them into a world of shadow. Another Scion, the elderly shop owner, rushed them through a maze of magnificent hanging carpets to a back courtyard where a dusty, nondescript delivery van stood waiting, its engine already running. Have you seen the Lost Canary? The new driver, a younger man with the hard, impassive eyes of a professional, asked. His hand rested near the small of his back, where the checkered grip of a Makarov PM pistol was just visible beneath his jacket. It flew north for the winter, Farah replied, the rehearsed words feeling alien and absurd on her tongue. Get in, we have a long drive, the man said, his tone devoid of emotion. Layla, now fully awake and overwhelmed by the strange men in dark places, began to cry, a thin, terrified wail. I want to go home, Papa. I want my bed. Reza knelt, his face level with hers, his heart breaking. Layla, my little star, remember our stories? We are going on a journey, like Rostam, to a new home, a better one, where you can be anything you want to be. I need you to be brave for me now. Can you do that? Can you be my brave little warrior? She nodded, her small face streaked with tears, and hugged him with a strength that belied her size. The transfer took less than 60 seconds. The van rumbled out of a different alleyway, leaving the taxi and its brave driver to become ghosts. As they merged onto the highway heading north toward Kazvin, another man, 3 kilometers away, was just beginning his hunt. Colonel Hakeem Danay of the IRGC's Counter-Espionage Directorate stood in the now ransacked apartment of Reza Shirazi. He was a tall, ascetic man, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that held a fanatic's unwavering certainty. He surveyed the scene with a cold, intellectual fury. The food still warm on the stove, the child's toys scattered on the floor. It was a hurried departure, an extraction. The Zionists. "His work phone is still on his desk, sir," an aide reported, holding up the device in a gloved hand. "His personal phone is on the nightstand. They left everything." "Protocol," Hakeem said, his voice a low rasp, like stone grinding on stone. "Professionals. They knew we were coming." He ran a gloved finger along a dusty bookshelf, stopping at a volume of Hafez's poetry. He pulled it out. A faint indentation was visible on the cover of the book behind it. A pressure mark. Something had been hidden there. "He has a daughter, 8 years old, Layla. Find her school records. Find her doctor's files. I want to know every allergy, every childhood fear. Find her favorite brand of ice cream. Find every friend she has ever had." The man is a scientist, a creature of logic. But the family is an emotional liability. They will be his weakness. Hakeem's eyes were chips of obsidian. "Seal the city. I want every checkpoint on every road out of Tehran on full alert. Check every vehicle, every truck, every bus. I want facial recognition running on every traffic camera between here and the northern borders. The dogs will run, but the Republic has 1,000 eyes. No one gets through. Find me, my traitor." The race had begun. The delivery van was cramped and smelled of gasoline and old vegetables. Riza, Farah, and Layla huddled in the back, concealed behind stacks of empty crates. For hours they drove in near total darkness, the sway and lurch of the van their only connection to the outside world. Each time the vehicle slowed, their bodies tensed, bracing for the harsh knock of a flashlight on the door, the barked command of a soldier at a checkpoint. In Baku, Ari was their guardian angel, their invisible shepherd. He routed them around the major checkpoints Hakeem had activated, guiding their driver down forgotten farm tracks and winding secondary roads that were little more than goat paths. He used real-time satellite imagery and signals intelligence, listening to the IRGC's frantic radio chatter, staying one step ahead of the closing net. It was a digital shell game, moving his precious assets across a board that was actively trying to kill them. "Checkpoint ahead," the driver's voice crackled through Ari's headset. "Small one, rural road, can't avoid it. Looks like a pop-up." Ari's eyes darted across his screens. He swore under his breath. It was a hasty roadblock on a rural road near the city of Takistan, not on his map. Hakeem was smart, unpredictable. He was adapting, throwing random obstacles in their path. "Hold position," Ari ordered. He zoomed in on the satellite image. 2 military trucks, a handful of soldiers smoking and stamping their feet in the cold. He scanned the surrounding terrain. A shallow river, a small, crumbling bridge. An idea, desperate and wildly dangerous, sparked in his mind. "There is a farm track 200 meters before the checkpoint, on your right. It leads down to the river. The water is low this time of year. The riverbed is gravel. You can ford it. It will bring you out a kilometer past them. The van could get stuck. We could be sitting ducks in the middle of a river." The driver countered, his voice tight. "It's a better chance than a face-to-face with the Pasdaran," Ari said, his voice hard as iron. "Move, now." In the back of the van, the family was thrown violently against the walls as the driver wrenched the wheel, lurching onto the bumpy track. The ride was punishing, the sound of branches scraping like claws against the metal deafening. Then, a steep descent and a heavy, shocking splash as they entered the river. The engine strained, whining in protest, the wheels spinning on the loose, wet gravel. For a heart-stopping minute, they were motionless, the cold river waters swirling around them, the smell of mud and decay filling the air. "It's not working. No traction," the driver hissed into his microphone. "More gas. Rock it back and forth. Damn it, Kian, move the vehicle." Ari yelled, his knuckles white on his desk. The engine screamed. The van lurched forward, then back, then forward again, tires finally catching on a submerged rock. Slowly, agonizingly, it crawled across the riverbed and up the muddy opposite bank, water and silt sluicing from its undercarriage. They were through. Ari leaned back in his chair, his shirt soaked with sweat. They had been lucky. Luck, however, was a finite and rapidly dwindling resource. Their destination was a safe house on the outskirts of Tabriz, a sprawling, ancient city in Iran's northwest. It was a crucial staging point, a place to rest, change vehicles again, and prepare for the final, most perilous leg of the journey. The border crossing itself. The safe house was the home of an elderly woman, a retired schoolteacher named Elham, another of Mossad's most unlikely and courageous assets. She was a quiet, devout woman who had seen the regime murder her student protesters in the streets in 2009. Her quiet, lifelong rebellion was to offer her home as a sanctuary for those fleeing its grasp. They arrived just before dawn, exhausted, bruised, and terrified. Elam welcomed them not as fugitives, but as cherished guests, her gentle eyes offering a comfort no words could. She gave them warm bread, cheese, and hot tea scented with cardamom. She showed Layla the litter of kittens her cat had just birthed, a small, perfect moment of normalcy in a universe of madness. For a few precious hours under Elham's roof, they were not on the run. They were simply a family. While they rested, Ari and his team were finalizing the details of the crossing. The official border crossings at Astara and Bilasuvar were fortresses. Going through them with fake documents was suicide. By now, Hakeem would have circulated their faces to every guard post in the country. The green border, the mountains and forests, was just as dangerous. Seeded with seismic sensors, motion detectors, and IRGC patrols who shot first and never asked questions. The plan was audacious, relying on a piece of experimental technology. Codenamed Keter Shemesh, Sun Crown. It was a thermal baffling blanket, a multi-layered composite of aerogel, mylar, and phase change materials that smelled faintly of ozone and plastic. To a thermal imager, anything wrapped in it simply ceased to exist, its heat signature perfectly matching the ambient temperature of its surroundings. It was heavy, claustrophobic, and their only hope. The plan was to hide the family inside a refrigerated truck carrying agricultural produce. Refrigerated trucks were common on this route, hauling fruit and vegetables into Azerbaijan. Their internal temperature was already low, providing a good baseline for the blanket to work with. The truck would cross at the main commercial checkpoint at Astara, a place of organized, bureaucratic chaos where a little confusion could be a powerful ally. "The truck is ready." A message flashed on Ari's screen from his logistics team on the ground. "The driver is solid." The driver was an Azeri national named Tofik, who had been hauling goods across this border for 20 years. He was also deeply in debt to certain Israeli businessmen who had saved his family from financial ruin. His loyalty was bought, paid for, and absolute. Back in Tabriz, as evening fell, it was time to move. Elam hugged Farah, whispering a prayer in her ear. She gave Layla a small carved wooden bird. "So the nightingale will always find its song again," she said, her eyes glistening. The new vehicle was a beat-up Renault, another anonymous car for the anonymous journey. The final 100 kilometers to the border town of Astara were the most tense. They were in the IRGC's backyard now, a heavily militarized zone. They passed convoy after convoy of military trucks. The air itself felt charged with menace. They met the refrigerated Volvo FH truck in a desolate, windswept lay-by 10 kilometers south of the border. The Azeri driver, Tofik, a barrel-chested man with a face like a weathered map, gave a curt nod. The back of the truck was opened, revealing stacks of pomegranate crates. A section of the crates was false, concealing a small, cramped compartment. "You will be in here," the new handler, a Katsa who had met them at the lay-by, explained, his voice all business. "There is a small oxygen tank. It will last for 3 hours, more than enough time. Once you are inside, we will wrap the compartment in the blanket. It is essential you make no sound, none. The guards are lazy, but not deaf." Riza looked at the coffin-sized space. Farah's face was ashen. Layla, seeing the box, began to whimper. "I don't want to go in the box, Papa. It's dark." Reza's composure, stretched thin for 24 agonizing hours, finally snapped. He turned on the handler. "She is a child. Look at her. How can we do this to her? There must be another way." The handler's face was granite. "The alternative is a VEVAK interrogation room in Tabriz. They will start with your daughter to make you talk. Then your wife. Then you. The choice is yours." The brutal, inhuman logic silenced him. Reza took a deep, shuddering breath and turned back to his daughter, his expression softening. "Remember our game? The quiet game? We are going to play the most important quiet game ever. If we win, the prize is the biggest bowl of ice cream in the whole world. Can you do that for me? Can you be silent, just for a little while?" Layla, trusting her father with the absolute faith of a child, wiped her eyes and nodded bravely. They climbed into the compartment. It was a tight fit, their bodies pressed together in the chilled darkness. Farah held Layla, humming a soft, tuneless lullaby. Reza closed his eyes, reciting verses from Hafez, a prayer to a god that he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. The handler and Tofik wrapped the compartment in the heavy metallic blanket, sealing them in. The last thing they heard was the heavy thud of the truck doors closing, and then a profound, terrifying silence, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. At his command post, Ari watched the truck's GPS signal begin its slow crawl toward the border. He activated a small, high-altitude stealth drone, its electro-optical camera providing a crystal-clear, top-down view of the Astara checkpoint. He could see the long lines of trucks, the bored-looking guards smoking and sharing jokes, the Iranian flag fluttering defiantly under the harsh sodium floodlights. Everything looked normal. Too normal. His instincts, honed by years of paranoia and close calls, screamed that something was wrong. He switched his audio feed to a program that was sweeping IRGC radio frequencies. He heard the usual procedural chatter, but then a new voice cut through, sharp and authoritative, a voice he recognized from intelligence intercepts. "All units, converge on Astara crossing. Subject vehicle is a refrigerated transport. License plate beginning with 77-DAL. The target is believed to be concealed within. I want that truck taken apart, piece by piece. No one crosses. Acknowledge." Ari's blood ran cold. It was Hakeem. He had figured it out. He didn't know how. A tip from a compromised scion, a lucky guess, a piece of brilliant analytical work. It didn't matter. They were driving straight into an ambush. "Tofik, abort, abort!" Ari yelled into his headset. "They know. Turn around now." There was no response. Ari checked the driver's comms link. A red light blinked on his console. Signal jammed. Hakeem wasn't just waiting for them. He was isolating them, cutting them off from their shepherd. The truck, their moving tomb, was now less than a kilometer from the checkpoint. On the drone feed, Ari could see IRGC technicals, pickup trucks with heavy machine guns mounted on the back, speeding toward the crossing from the south, their lights flashing. They would be there in minutes. He had one last, desperate card to play. A cyber warfare team from Unit 8200 was on standby, linked to his console. They had a single-use exploit, a piece of malware codenamed Digital Ghost, that could infiltrate the border checkpoint's antiquated computer system. It was a sledgehammer, not a scalpel, and its use would be detected almost immediately, burning their access to that network for years. His orders were to use it only in the most dire emergency. This was it. "Execute Digital Ghost," Ari commanded, his voice tight. "Stand by," a calm female voice replied from Tel Aviv. Seconds later, the checkpoint was plunged into digital chaos. The electronic gates malfunctioned, swinging wildly. The computer systems that scanned license plates and driver credentials all went black, displaying meaningless strings of code. The floodlights flickered and died, replaced by the weak, sputtering glow of emergency backup generators that cast long, eerie shadows. The guards' radios erupted in a deafening cacophony of white noise. "Ghost is in the machine," the voice from Tel Aviv confirmed. "You have a 2-minute window before their system reboots to a secure baseline." On the drone feed, Ari saw Tawfik's truck, caught in the confusion. The guards were distracted, shouting, trying to figure out what was happening. Tawfik, the veteran driver, saw his chance. Instead of waiting, he laid on his horn and began to slowly inch his way through the chaos, gesturing angrily out the window as if he were just an impatient trucker caught in a frustrating power outage. He was 50 meters from the gate. 30. 20. Then, Hakeem's convoy screeched to a halt at the entrance to the checkpoint. Soldiers piled out, weapons raised. Hakeem himself stepped out of a black SUV, his eyes scanning the lines of trucks, zeroing in on Tawfik's. He raised his hand and pointed, a grim reaper selecting his next soul. "That one! Stop him!" The guards, finally spurred into action by a senior officer, raised their rifles. Tawfik wasn't going to make it. This was the moment of decision, the fulcrum on which 3 lives balanced. Ari had 2 options. He could order Tawfik to surrender, hoping to save his life, but sacrificing the Shirazis to Hakeem's torturers. Or he could do the unthinkable. His fingers flew across his keyboard, activating the mission's final, most violent contingency. A scion on a motorcycle, who had been waiting patiently in the traffic on the Iranian side, received a single-word text message. "Go." The motorcyclist revved his engine and sped toward the checkpoint. Not toward the gate, but toward a large electrical transformer station that powered the entire facility. As he drew alongside it, he threw a small, powerful thermite charge onto the transformer's housing. The explosion was immense, a blinding blue-white flash that turned night into day, followed by a deafening roar that shook the drone's camera. The transformer didn't just blow, it vaporized, sending a shower of sparks and molten metal into the air. The backup generators, already strained by the cyber attack, sputtered and died. The entire checkpoint was plunged into absolute, primordial darkness and chaos. In that moment of calculated anarchy, Tawfik floored the accelerator. The heavy truck surged forward, smashing through the now powerless barrier arm. Shots rang out in the darkness, the muzzle flashes of the IRGC rifles like angry, swarming fireflies. Ari watched on his drone's thermal camera, his heart in his throat. He saw sparks ricochet off the truck's cab. Tawfiq was driving onto the bridge that spanned the Astarachai River, the thin ribbon of water that separated Iran from Azerbaijan. Freedom was 100 meters of concrete away, but Hakeem was relentless. His men, recovering their senses, scrambled into their vehicles, giving chase onto the bridge itself. Headlights cut through the darkness. The IRGC vehicles were faster, closing the distance rapidly. Inside the hidden compartment, the family was thrown violently from side to side. The sound of the explosion, the gunfire, the screech of tires, it was a terrifying, muffled cacophony. Layla was screaming, a sound of pure terror that cut Farah to the bone. A bullet slammed through the truck's side view mirror. Another shattered the passenger side window. Tawfiq grunted in pain as shrapnel tore into his shoulder, but he kept his foot pressed to the floor. The Azerbaijani side of the bridge was visible now. The lights of a different country, a different world. Suddenly, the truck swerved violently. Tawfiq had been hit again, this time badly. He slumped over the wheel. The truck careened toward the side of the bridge, its tires screeching as it threatened to smash through the railing and plunge into the dark river below. From the darkness of the compartment, Reza heard the change in the engine, felt the lurch of impending disaster. All the fear, all the passivity, was burned away by a flood of pure, primal adrenaline. Using his shoulder, he smashed against the false wall of the crates again and again, until the wood splintered and broke. He scrambled out into the back of the truck, Farah and Layla right behind him. The rear doors were latched from the outside. He was still trapped. He saw the bullet holes riddling the truck's thin metal skin. He looked at his wife and daughter, huddled amongst the scattered pomegranates, their faces illuminated by the strobing headlights of their pursuers. This was it. The end of the line. The end of the... But then, a new sound joined the fray. A sound that cut through everything else. The heavy, unmistakable whump-whump-whump of helicopter rotors. Two black, unmarked Sikorsky HH-60 Pave Hawks, flying low and fast without lights, swooped in from the Azerbaijani side. They were Mossad's elite Sayeret Matkal commandos, the final, unwritten insurance policy. One helicopter unleashed a terrifying barrage of suppressing fire from a Dillon Arrow M134D minigun on the IRGC vehicles, its 3,000 rounds per minute fusillade tearing chunks of metal from the pursuing trucks and forcing them to a screeching halt. The other descended with impossible speed and precision, its side door open, hovering just inches above the back of the still-moving truck. A Commando, clipped into a safety harness, leaned out and used a massive pair of bolt cutters to snap the lock on the truck's rear doors, wrenching them open. "Go! Go now!" the soldier screamed in Farsi over the deafening roar of the rotors. Reza didn't hesitate. He grabbed Layla, pushing her into the waiting arms of another Commando inside the helicopter. He helped a sobbing Farah up, and then, with a final, desperate leap, he pulled himself aboard as the helicopter banked sharply, climbing away from the bridge, away from Iran, and into the safety of the night sky. From the open door, Reza Shirazi looked down. He saw the truck finally crash into the bridge's railing. He saw the IRGC soldiers, small figures of impotent rage, firing uselessly into the sky. He saw the river, a dark scar on the land, the border he had just crossed. He pulled his family close, the roar of the helicopter the first sound of his new life. Weeks later, in a sterile, sun-drenched conference room north of Tel Aviv, Ari Ben Zion faced the head of the Mossad. He expected a commendation, a quiet word of praise for a mission snatched from the jaws of catastrophic failure. The director, A gaunt, silver-haired man known only as Didi Aho pushed a file across the polished mahogany table. The Shirazi family is settling in well. Langley has given them new identities. A quiet life in suburban Maryland. The girl Layla is enrolled in a new school. She's already correcting her teacher's math. And Reza? Ari asked. The debriefing? The centrifuge data he brought out? The director gave a thin, cold smile that did not reach his eyes. The data on the thumb drive he carried was valuable, yes. A nice bonus. It confirmed what we already suspected about their progress on the IR-8 centrifuges. But it wasn't the real prize. Ari frowned, a knot of confusion tightening in his stomach. Sir, Dr. Shirazi was more than just a source, Ari. He was a delivery system. For the last 6 months, he wasn't just feeding us information. He was feeding our code into the control systems at Fordo and Natanz. Piece by piece, a line here, a harmless-looking subroutine there, all of it dormant, invisible. But when activated... The director tapped a key on his laptop and turned the screen toward Ari. It showed a cascading series of system failure alerts from a classified signals intercept. Alarms, emergency shutdowns, critical errors in harmonic frequency modulation. 2 days ago, we sent the activation signal via a secure satellite burst. The virus, what our friends at the NSA are calling Stuxnet 2.0, came to life. It's not just spinning the centrifuges to death like last time. That was crude. This is more elegant. It's subtly, almost imperceptibly, altering the enrichment levels, introducing microscopic flaws into the rotor components, and, most beautifully, reporting false, perfect data to the Iranian engineers. They'll be producing useless, degraded material for years without even knowing it. They'll think their science is failing, not that they've been sabotaged from within. We didn't just extract a scientist, Ari. We neutered their entire breakout capability for a decade. Ari stared at the screen, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying, chilling clarity. Reza's sudden desperation to get out. The timing, the extreme risks Mossad was willing to take, the resources they were willing to burn to extract one man and his family. He knew, Ari said, his voice barely a whisper. Reza knew this was the real mission.